Howdy of you delicious people, I'm here today to review Wayward Pines. So, really, I didn't know what to expect from this show. I didn't go into the trailer, I didn't watch anything, and so I just went into the show and I was like, meh, let's see what happens. If anything, for these reviews, I'm not going to go into heavily detailed like I would have in other reviews. You can go and check them out and understand that there's a lot of reviews that are going to heavy detail in a lot of my other reviews, but I'm not going to do that for this one. I'm just going to chillax it and just hope for the best. If people don't like this show or people don't know it exists, then now they do. And if you do know about this show, then great. Hopefully you you come with me on this bizarre journey of the show that I actually man, when I went into this show, I was like, this is like a mind bender, like a mind F, where these two agents are just going on okay, I guess we're gonna go into this Wayward Pines, Idaho. Okay, all right, so they're to all of a sudden go into Wayward Pines, and then all of a sudden there is to be a car accident, and I'm not telling verbatim, but I'll get to more of this into spoilers. I'm kind of teeing this up right now. So we have this detective who is named Ethan, who is to all of a sudden start going through this town and is trying to start understanding what is up with this town. Every single time Ethan is to go through parts of this town, he is to consistently get this bizarrish runaround, where he is to have one person tell him that his wallet is in one place, which it actually isn't. We have people who are consistently having a story or something like that changed, and it's freaking weird. We all of a sudden have Ethan who is to go into a bar, which all of a sudden the person that was the bartender last night has never worked there since. That all of a sudden the person that was the bartender is not the bartender at all at this bar ever. And so Ethan is what the heck is going on? All of a sudden, we have one of the doctors that is desperately wanting to perform brain surgery on Ethan, and I'm what the heck is going on with this show? This show is Looney Tunes! Not animated or whatever, but it's just, it gets crazy within one episode. And so this show really does break down to be almost like a WandaVision without superpowers. Or it feels like the Jim Carrey, the Truman Show. It feels bizarrely, everybody in this town is putting on some performance or some act for something or someone within one town, and it seems very odd. So, and eventually it seems we start to see Ethan's boss, Hassler, that is also trying to figure out what the heck actually happened to his agents that have gone missing, and they pull apart these guys' cars, or this guy's car, the one detective that is driving both of them there. Hassler's going through the car, and he's wait a minute, there's parts missing from here, and also there's there's no evidence that either Ethan or Stallings had even been in this car. It's weird. So, I don't know, it's just kind of the fascination of this show, but I think we're going to go into this, and I'm going to talk about it in much more thorough detail. And I kind of did a little bit of I'm teeing it up for people to just be okay, what is going on with this show? I want to check this out. Definitely go out of your way to say that you've seen this show on Amazon. like I kind of like did a little bit of spoilers in here, but it's either you're interested in the show or you could care less, or maybe you'll get interested with the cryptic version and then or the teed up version, and then you'll go out of your way to watch this show and be like, dude, I'm freaking hooked, because I was hooked too. Like, after watching this show, after the first episode, I'm like, dude, I am freaking hooked with this show. Like, I am so confused. I want to figure out what's going on. So now, instantly hooked with this show. Instant hooked. Go out of your way to watch this on Amazon. I didn't check to see if it was a Prime membership or not, but it said free for Amazon. Because I didn't actually like watch this on Amazon. I watched this somewhere else. And so I just easily got it through that. But anyways, yeah, check this out on Amazon. If it is a Prime thing, then you can watch this for free. If you don't have a Prime membership, then honestly, you can go to any number of apps that I usually mention through a number of things that I've consistently mentioned through a number of things. So, I think it's that coveted time to just go into spoilers. I've already talked about this for 6 minutes, and plus also, like, the episode is only 42 minutes, so let's quickly get through this. So, it is about that coveted time for me to go into spoilers. I actually did enjoy this show. Go out of your way to say that you finally see Wayward Pines, because I am consistently going to. So, it is spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time you can spoil this episode. So, in the very beginning of this episode, we are to have Ethan that is to wake up in the middle of the woods somewhere. Seemingly injured, seemingly having bruises upon his face. That is, I hope, the thumbnail that is consistently going to stay here. Because, I don't know, a lot of times that I adjust thumbnails a lot, just because I can. And people might get confused of what a visual is. It happens. So, Ethan is to wake up to eventually just stumble around this woods, not understanding what the heck is going on. All of a sudden, Ethan is to continue walking to eventually make it to this store, and he is to ask this woman, hey, where am I? And this clerk is to mention that he's in Wayward Pines, and it looks like he's in pretty rough shape. Should I call someone? And so Ethan is to just plow onto the ground and pass out. Like I said, or if I haven't said, this review may not be heavily detailed. I'm just going through a very limited way of reviewing this, so if there's not a whole lot of details compared to other reviews, I just take it with what you will. So Ethan is to eventually wake up in this hospital to be taken care of by this nurse Pam, and so Ethan is to eventually, I guess, have not known his name, like, when he was to arrive at this hospital, and so I guess it took him a couple days to start remembering things. So, while that's going on, we have Teresa Burke, who is trying to call Ethan, and it's going straight to voicemail. And so Teresa Burke is actually Ethan's wife, and so she's calling him just kind of concerned about what's, like, hey, what's going on? Like, maybe you're busy, but, like, I wanted to see if you got there okay, but, okay. So, Ethan is to eventually wake up in a hospital that doesn't seem to be all that busy. And so Ethan is to remember his name, and then eventually Pam is to mention that Ethan was in a car accident, and then all of a sudden Ethan is getting his memory jogged of, like, how he got to this place. So Ethan is to have been with Rick Stalling, and so Ethan is to get this pamphlet of information that he is to go to Wayward Pines with Rick Stalling to eventually find Bill Evans and Kate Hewson. And so Evans is like, well, you know what? That's kind of weird because Kate Hewson was my like partner. Like why why am I like going and trying to find my partner? Like it's kind of weird that Hassler would let me go and find my own partner. That's okay. So so eventually they're not quite understanding like why they're going out here and why they're searching for these people. But then all of a sudden there is this car that they are in that ends up smashing right into this truck, and that is the last thing that Evans is to remember. Also, we have a moment in the very beginning of this episode that I guess is to be a flashback, but we also have another flashback when Ethan is to eventually meet someone that he's familiar with from his past. So Ethan, in a flashback, I guess, a flashback memory, is to talk to a Dr. Bauer, Bauer. And so Ethan and the doctor are to go into this session because this doctor is a therapist. So the doctor is to eventually ask if Ethan has been able to lean on anybody lately. And Ethan mentions, like, well, yeah, like, I have been talking to my partner, and, like, I think I have kind of, like, worked over, like, what had happened in my past. Because Ethan had let somebody slip through his fingers, a guy that had killed a number of people, and he feels bad about it. But, like, I guess it was just something that he, like, didn't think, he didn't think that this person was a bad guy, but then he, like, misjudged it or whatever, and it just blew up in his face, and so mistakes were made. So, the doctor eventually, after this whole conversation, like, oh, well, like, oh, you're just leaning on your partner. And so eventually the doctor is to ask Ethan, it's like, well, have you ever had any other, like, hallucinations or anything like that? And Ethan is like, well, what exactly are hallucinations? And the doctor is like, well, seeing things or, like, seeing a person that isn't there. And Ethan is like, no. So I guess maybe Ethan before had hallucinations, and now it seems that he's much more fine. Like, so it's kind of telling us that right away when Ethan is to go into this situation, he is to be of a sane mind, going into now current time what is going on with him. So getting back into what is supposedly, I guess, current time, even though there is some times where people are to say that they have been here for X amount of time, and Ethan has to correct them, or Ethan has to just be like, well, wait a minute, you haven't been here for that long. This doesn't make any sense. So, or something along those lines, where somebody thinks that it's a certain year, but it's not that at all. So, anyways, pushing on. So, Ethan is to be at this doctor's office with Nurse Pam, and so he is to remember his flashback of his car accident that he used to be in. And so Ethan is asking Nurse Pam, it's like, well, what happened to Stalling? Is he okay? And Nurse Pam is like, no, I'm sorry, he's dead. And so Ethan, of course, is to ask, like, well, could I make a phone call so that way I can call my my boss or something, like, could I get my cell phone? And Nurse Pam is like, well, I'm sorry, but like all of your stuff is in the sheriff's department. And Ethan is like, well, like, why does the sheriff have my stuff? That seems weird. So Ethan is to eventually go, and after like talking to this nurse, like wanting to get a phone call, or wanting to use a phone for any reason, and Nurse Pam is like, well, I'm sorry, like, we just don't want any, like, we just don't like phones to be here because it just causes a ruckus for all the patients. Yeah, this hospital that has so many patients, yeah, you can just tell there's millions upon millions of patients. When Ethan is to walk through any part of this hospital, man, is it just slammed every single day. Not really. So Ethan is to eventually just decide upon himself, well, I think I'm in good enough shape to get the heck out of here, because I want my phone call and I want to find my cell phone, so I am going to do that. So Ethan is to leave this hospital and make his way to this bar. And so Ethan is to meet a bartender who is named Beverly. And so Ethan is to meet this girl, and he is to say, you know what, like, you are probably the nicest person that I've ever met in this town, and I've only been here for a very short amount of time. And so Ethan is to eventually tell Beverly that's like, hey, like, you know what, I do have money on me, but I have, like, I do have money, but it's at the sheriff's department. And the sheriff's department is bizarrely closed for some reason. And so I could not go in there to try to get my wallet or any of my possessions, but I do have money. And so, like, I would love to get a burger, but I just don't have the money on me. And so Beverly is like, well, sure, like, who are you? And so he introduces himself as Ethan Burke, and he is to mention that he is a secret agent, or a Secret Service agent, because eventually they showcase consistently parts about Hassler and what he is to find out about this, and eventually we'll get to that in a second here. So Ethan is to introduce himself to Beverly, and so Ethan is to make a phone call trying to call his wife yet again, but bizarrely it only goes to a voicemail. And so Ethan is like, well, hey, like, I'm going to be at the Wayward Pines Hotel. Please get a hold of me. Like, if anything, I made it here. I'm fine. I got into a car accident, but again, I'm fine. So, like, if anything, like, call me at the Wayward Pines Hotel. So Ethan hangs up with that phone call, and bizarrely, Beverly quickly has made this burger for Ethan because he wanted it bloody. So Beverly quickly makes this burger, and Ethan's like confused because of, like, man, that was really quick. And Beverly's like, well, you wanted it bloody, and like, yeah, like, this show just bizarrely just quickly makes burgers. Anyways, so Ethan is to eat his food because I'm assuming they probably already knew what his favorite food would probably be, bizarrely. So Ethan is to eventually get some note from Beverly. And Ethan is like, okay, what is this for? And Beverly is to mention that it's her address. If Ethan needs help, go to her address to find her. And then on the very back of the note, it bizarrely says there are no crickets in Wayward Pines. So after Ethan eats his burger and eventually is to go to this hotel to try to get a room, Ethan is to eventually find some bush because he is to hear these crickets in this bush. So Ethan is to go and look inside this bush to see if he can find a cricket, but instead he bizarrely just sees this sound box where he's like, okay, I'm going to put that back because that seems really weird. So Ethan is to eventually wake up the next day after being in this hotel, and the guy who is the hotel manager is just like, well, checkout's at 11. And Ethan is like, well, I'm sorry, I still don't have my wallet. The sheriff's department has my wallet. If anything, once I get my wallet, I'll be able to pay you for this night's stay. And so the hotel manager is like, well, that's great, but I'm going to have you, like, evacuate this room. Or this... And so Ethan's like, well, okay then. And so he goes to, like, close the door, and the manager, like, stops him from closing the door. And so Ethan is like, well, okay then, like, I'll go and evacuate this room. As weird as that sounds. So Ethan gets his stuff and then leaves. And so let's get to the Hassler stuff. So Hassler is to have not received a lick of much information about the two detectives that have made their way to Wayward Pines. If anything, they had found I think they had found the car, but like they couldn't find either one of the agents. And so really Hassler is making the assumption that maybe either one of them had in this accident, like, bizarrely, like, lit on fire, and so, like, maybe they have just bizarrely gone missing, to the point of eventually Hassler going and telling Teresa Burke that her husband is, like, MIA, he's missing. And so eventually we are also to find that Hassler is to find the car of these two detectives, and bizarrely they could not find the GPS in this car, and they also couldn't find any lick of information that was to showcase that either one of these agents were in the car. Like, any DNA, any kind of nothing, maybe not even a butt print from this car. Like, it seems like there was absolutely no evidence of these people existing within this car. There was no fingerprints, no nothing. And that seemed, like, really weird. So, also, we found out that before Ethan was to get this case, he was to try and celebrate his son's birthday and, like, blow out the candles and like, try to do something with his family, and he was to get called from work about this case. So yeah, so pushing on, I think I got through most of the, like, the stuff that led up to this point, but there is, like, one flashback still left, but there's a whole reason for that. So Ethan is to eventually leave this hotel to immediately go to the sheriff's department, and this time people are there. So Ethan is to go and talk to Arlene. That is to get him to the sheriff, which the sheriff, of course, is Sheriff Pope. And here's the thing. Before Ethan was to get to the sheriff, because Ethan was to just be curious about this address that Beverly had mentioned to him about. Ethan was to go into this house, and bizarrely this house feels like it's been bizarrely burnt down. And so Ethan is to go into this house just kind of like, what the heck is this house? Ethan is to go further into this house to eventually see Bill Evans strapped to some bed, and he had been like killed and tortured and a number of things, and it seems like he's been tied to this bed for a very long time. So Ethan is like, okay, that's a little weird. So Ethan, when he is at the sheriff's office, Ethan is to mention to the sheriff, hey, yeah, like, I ended up talking to this bartender named Beverly, and she told me to come to this house. I went there, and all of a sudden I found a dead body there that has probably been rotting there for a very long time. And it is one of the agents that I was looking for here. And so Sheriff Pope, after like just having such a good time with his hey man, rum raisin, like, have you ever had rum raisin before? And Ethan is like, are you even listening to a word I'm saying? Yeah, this rum raisin, man. Okay. So Sheriff Pope, I'm making jokes about this whole like rum raisin isn't everyone's favorite. So Ethan is to, or Sheriff Pope is to just kind of like stop and just like, okay, like you said that there were 2 agents you were looking for, and Ethan was like, yeah, and it's like, okay, what is the other name of the other agent? I'll send out an APP or an APB. And so Ethan says Kate Hewson, and he describes her. It's like 27 and beautiful for certain standards and whichever. Because eventually Ethan is to have a flashback eventually come where Ethan is getting comforted by Kate because Ethan had blown this case, and like it was a big case that like is really getting to him or haunting him. And so it seemed that Kate tries to comfort him, but eventually Ethan is to all of a sudden like start kissing onto Kate, and eventually probably getting a little bit too far with that, to where Kate, I think, has to remind Ethan, it's like, well, hey, like, Ethan, you're married, and this and that, and we're in the office, and Ethan is just like, and just kissing it out and whichever. So, like, to just tell us that I guess both Kate and Ethan, I guess, did have an affair, and so it is kind of weird that eventually Ethan is going out of his way to go and try to retrieve Kate, but maybe I guess there is good reason, I guess, for Ethan to eventually make it here. I don't know. Because eventually we have Hassler, who is to be talking with a Dr. Jenkins, and eventually I will get to that guy later. I don't know what his name actually is when he's talking to Hassler, but this guy, I guess, is evidently Dr. Jenkins, but we'll get to that. So, but anyways, so back with Ethan and Sheriff Pope. So, Ethan is to also give Sheriff Pope the address to where he went before he got here, because Ethan is to mention a dead body, and so Sheriff Pope is like, okay, well, I'll go right ahead and look at that building, and I'll find exactly where, like, you mentioned for me to go and check out this dead body. Okay, sure. So Ethan is to, after he's like done talking with the sheriff, because Ethan was like being very nice and cordial with the sheriff, like mentioning like, "Hey man, like I'll go and I'll take you right to the house where I found this dead body. Like I will walk you over there." And Sheriff Pope is like, "Well, I don't want you to." Like that just means he knows about the dead body, but he doesn't want to do anything about it. Like there's something fishy about the sheriff, and there's something fishy about like about how he goes about things, and then eventually towards the real tail end of this episode there's really something fishy. So let's get into it. So Ethan is to God, where do we transition from here? I want to figure out where we transition from here, because good God. I might have to pause this here because I have to rethink of where we stop here. I think we transition into the hospital, so let's get to that. Either way, if it doesn't, then we'll transition there anyways to try to get this kind of out of the way and try to get this kind of finishing up here. So eventually Ethan is to land back into the hospital where we are to have Dr. Jenkins mention to... Oh, wait. It's the bar. The bar, yeah. So Ethan is done talking with Sheriff Pope, and so Ethan goes back to the bar to ask for Beverly. And the guy that is working there is saying, like, "I'm sorry, but Beverly has never worked here. Like, me and some other guy are the only two people that have ever worked here." And so Ethan is like, "What are you guys doing? Like, what are you guys trying to do here?" And so eventually we just have the bartender who ends up just hitting frickin' Ethan over the head and just calling out certain numbers of this who I guess Ethan should be, that I guess he's like something's going really wrong with him. So Ethan is to all of a sudden appear into the hospital. That's where we go. And like I was just, how do we transition? Because I was drawing a blank spot. So Ethan is to appear in this hospital, and now he is strapped to this bed talking to Dr. Jenkins. And Dr. Jenkins is to mention that Ethan is having some kind of brain injury where blood is coming from out of his brain, and so they have to perform an operation. And Ethan is like, "Well, I'm more than happy to do this surgery, but I want to do it in another town." And Dr. Jenkins is like, "Well, we talked to the people in the other town, and like they don't want anything to do with it." And so Ethan is like, "But I want to do the surgery in another town." And so like Ethan is so demanding with this doctor because everything that this doctor is saying seems like bullshit. And so all of a sudden Nurse Pam comes in to try to calm Ethan and tries to give him this sedative, but Ethan won't let her do this because he refuses to have the surgery done. He refuses to have her give him the sedative, and so they're trying to do all of this regardless. So Nurse Pam is wanting to have Ethan settle down, or she is going to inject this needle right into his bone. So Ethan will not let up, so the nurse just jabs this freaking needle into this guy's leg. And so both the nurse and Dr. Jenkins are to leave, and so Beverly is to come in and unhook Ethan and drag Ethan through this hospital to try to find an exit. They have problems finding an exit, so they both go through these two rooms. And so Nurse Pam is to figure out where Ethan is, and so she's talking to him, mentioning that if he doesn't come out, they're going to give him a horrible surgery that he'll be awake for every single minute for, and so on and so forth. and that eventually Ethan is going to pass out from the injection that she had done on him. And so the nurse is saying all this, and Ethan had broke this mirror to kind of see like who's coming from this hallway. And so the nurse is actually thinking that Ethan is in this one door, which he actually isn't. Beverly is in that door. And so what Ethan does is just rams Nurse Pam like into this wall to where her face is now bleeding. And so both Beverly and Ethan make a run for it. They go into this car, and so they drive back to this home where Ethan is to just kind of like sleep things off. And so eventually, like, Beverly is to say that they're kind of safe in the, I guess, the Bill Evans home, I guess. And so eventually we have where Ethan is to eventually steal a car and try to drive out of this town. And so bizarrely, when Ethan is to try to drive out of this town, he goes into the exit sign of this town, but then eventually when he drives further, he drives right into the welcome sign of this town. And so he's like, what the heck? Like, I guess I can't leave here? And so eventually Ethan is to start kind of going around and looking around in this town. And all of a sudden, he is to eventually find Kate Hewson, who is in this town with Harold Bollinger, as I guess as her fake husband. And so Ethan is to eventually follow Kate to her home, and so Ethan is to knock on Kate's door, and Kate is to come to the door. And so Ethan is to have Kate with them, kind of like just kind of like sitting at these steps. And Ethan is like, what the heck is going on, Kate? And Kate is like, I can't tell you anything because people would get upset. And Ethan's like, what people? And Kate's like, I can't tell you that. Shush. So people are watching. Shush. And so Ethan's like, what the heck? What's going on? Ethan doesn't understand. So eventually, after this dialogue that like really doesn't go anywhere, Kate starts to walk back into her home, and Ethan is like, okay, so tell me at least this. The thing that I had before, like, it isn't happening again, is it? And Kate just goes, no. Like, so I guess Ethan was crazy before, but it seems that he is still actually a sane person now. It's just something is going goofy with this town. So reasonably, Teresa is to tell her son that it seems that their husband / father is to be going missing. Ethan has to tell her son this. And so Teresa and her son are like playing guitar and all kinds of things. And so Teresa is to eventually go to her phone to check her messages, and there's 0. So every single phone call that Ethan made to his wife, they bizarrely erased somehow, or that wasn't actually a real phone. Ethan is to eventually also call Hassel, his superior, and bizarrely there was some fake person that was on the phone saying that they had been in that office for just a few days and they don't really know anybody. What a liar, pants on fire. And so Ethan was to ask for them to get Hassel on the phone, no matter what he's doing. If he's in the bathroom taking a dump, Ethan wanted Hassel on the phone, and this girl said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't." And so Ethan's like... So eventually Ethan is to go back into this car, and Sheriff Pope is to stop him and say, like, well, hey, like, you're not really getting anywhere, are you? And Ethan is like, yeah, how do I get out of here? And Sheriff Pope is to tell Ethan, it's like, you can't get out of here. And that's how, for me, the show ends. And I'm like, oh my god, so, like, this is really gripping, but I'm going to grip my way out of here. Because, frickin', this is like a 42-minute episode, and there's 40-some-odd minutes that I've already talked for. This is the very first episode, so it'll probably be a long review. Probably other episodes may be shorter, maybe they won't, because I'll maybe be thinking of what the heck is going on in this show. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.